There's one thing that people across all levels of fitness unfortunately fall into, and that's self-sabotage. There are so many different ways to go about this, to understand why people do this, and how to actually fix it, but it doesn't really matter what level of fitness you're actually in. So if you're just starting and your goal is to lose fat, or if you're someone who's really advanced, really far along, and you're trying to adhere to like the best training program, the best routine possible, no matter who you are, there are a bunch of different situations where you might run into self-sabotage. And in order to understand like how this actually works and why people do it, a lot of times, I feel at least, it's because people don't see the end goal as being actually feasible. So they've convinced themselves that they are trying to achieve an end goal, like being a certain body fat, having a certain level of visible abdominal development, having a certain level of arm size, having a certain level of aesthetics, having a certain level of something where they've convinced themselves that this is no longer possible. They've convinced themselves they're just chasing something that is essentially out of reach, and they are reformatting their entire training and fitness experience into something that they believe they have now made the decision is no longer achievable for them. So once this happens, people get apathetic, and apathy is one of the hardest things I personally find to deal with in the fitness industry and health space in general, because people do not realize how bad apathy actually is for them. Because what apathy says is that you have given up on purpose. You no longer think that what you are trying to achieve is within reason or possible. This is really difficult because now not only do you have to get people to do the work that they need to do, like being mindful about their diet, their training, or whatever it is, but now you have to actually convince them that it is possible. Despite the fact you could show them evidence of people having done the same thing, people may be being in a worse position and having done the same thing. Despite the fact you could show them all of that, it doesn't matter, because now you have to reconvince them that it is possible for them. I find this happens all the time with people who are older, over 40 or 50, even people you might know personally, family members, whoever it is, and trying to tell them, hey, it is possible for you to improve your life, to change your life, to improve the way you look and feel. It doesn't really matter what your starting point is. It doesn't matter if you're 70 years old, 300 pounds, if you're 30 years old, 180, it doesn't really make a difference. You can still make significant lifestyle changes, live longer, be healthier and happier. So getting out of that apathy cycle, I think, to me at least, as someone who sees this all the time, is quite literally the hardest thing to do, but also the most fulfilling. So once you get someone out of that, now we have to figure out, okay, well, why are they still self-sabotaging? What are they doing that is preventing them from achieving their goals? And I think a lot of it comes down to making things more complicated or harder than it actually needs to be. So there's a guy I watch a lot, his name's Higher Up Wellness. He makes great content, and he has a very simple saying, and he says that it isn't easy, but it is simple. And that's something that people do need to understand, because when you try to watch someone go through a calorie deficit or go through a, just a little recomp, whatever it is, and you try to actually watch them go through this process, they a lot of the times will convince themselves that what they're doing is more complicated or convoluted than it is, where they just can't accept that what they're doing is difficult, at least to an extent, right? You have to convince yourself that it is okay to go to bed slightly hungry at times. I'm not talking starving, but slightly hungry. You have to convince yourself that that's okay. You have to convince yourself, if you're a coach, that you're able to sort of portray this information to someone else in a way that's not going to scare them off, like saying, hey, you have to kind of get used to doing this. You have to get used to going to bed just slightly hungry sometimes. You have to get used to eating a little less and being a little less full and being a little tired, maybe if you're, prepping for a show or whatever. There are a lot of different scenarios here, so it's not one size fits all or whatever, but there are a lot of different situations where you have to convince people of things that they might not be accustomed to, even think is possible, nor want to do. But again, the reality is it is a lot simpler than a lot of people realize. The entire process of being healthier, making yourself look better and feel better is a lot simpler than so many people realize or are willing to give themselves credit for. Because when they do this process and they go through 4 weeks, when they lose 5 pounds, they go, oh my God, I only lost 5 pounds in 4 weeks. Like, well, maybe you're stubborn. Maybe, you're someone who isn't cutting the way you're supposed to be. Maybe your body, for whatever reason, is fluctuating through water and glycogen, and for whatever reason, you're not losing the same amount of weight as someone else. That's fine. If you've verified and you've watched what you've eaten and you've ensured that you've done anything correctly, then it's all that really matters, right? So it's a very hard cycle to sort of break people out of, because they'll go for a month and go, screw it, nothing's getting done. I'm not accomplishing anything. You actually are. You're just not realizing it. So that's something that people really do have to sort of understand, and is hard to get them to understand at that level. So once you, at least in my opinion, convince people that their goals are real, what they're trying to achieve is real. Like, once you understand as a client, as someone who is trying to improve their physique, improve their experience living to be healthier, once you're in that position and someone can actually inform you that what you are trying to do is possible and that people have done this before, you're able to break out of that cycle of chronic apathy apathy where you think everything you're doing is futile. Then once you break out of that, you have to kind of look through your training, your diet, cardio, look through everything and say, hey, you know what? This is all possible. It's not particularly easy, but it's also not particularly complicated. It is simpler than I'm making it out to be. And this is one thing that I think when people, at least people I talk to that go to the gym and they, weigh out everything they eat or whatever, and they get really meticulous with their protein intake, but they're not even training hard. It's like, well, you don't really need to worry about weighing every single thing you eat. If you're training really hard and your calories are ballpark where they should be, you'll probably be fine. So people add all these extra layers to it, like, oh, I got to eat clean and I got to do this and that. And it's like, well, I mean, it's nice. It's nice to eat clean or whatever, but most people practically aren't going to do that all the time. So understanding practicality and saying, hey, look, this isn't really realistic for a lot of people is also very important. So I feel like it's just stripping things down to a much simpler level, stripping things down to a way where people see, okay, I have a handful of tangible, provable things I need to do. I need to eat in the calorie deficit. I need to eat in the calorie surplus, whatever it is. I need to train to X amount of reps in reserve. I need to train, for a certain amount of sets. I have to follow a program for a certain amount of weeks. I have to do these things for a certain amount of time, and once I do that, I will be tangibly, provably closer to my goal. And once you can get people to see that and actually understand they are making progress, even if it's not visually manifesting the way they want it to, that's probably the best way to break them out of that apathy cycle and to actually get them interested in what they're doing and stop sabotaging themselves and skipping days and skipping meals and whatever. So that's the way I see it. I hope you guys found this useful. As always, coaching down below, apply down there, and I'll see you guys soon.